A millionaire allowed a street boy to bring his mother to dinner at his restaurant. When he saw who the boy brought, he shuddered from head to toe. The pristine kitchen of Chicago's most prestigious restaurant, the Taylors erupted in chaos as smoke billowed from the main stove. Executive Chef Marcus Bennett's voice cut through the pandemonium. "Table 7's order is burning. Where's Chef Clark?" The usual symphony of clattering pots and sizzling pans transformed into a discordant clash of panic and confusion. Through the haze, a slender figure in a chef's whites stumbled, catching herself against the steel counter. Penelope Clark, once the city's most respected culinary mentor, now a shadow of her former self, tried to steady her trembling hands. The world spun around her as spots danced in her vision. I just need a moment," she whispered, but her voice was lost in the kitchen's cacophony. Oh, that the pass orders piled up like autumn leaves. "Chef Clark, the governor's table is waiting," Marcus shouted, his face reddening with each passing second. But Penelope couldn't respond. Her fingers, once steady enough to craft the most delicate sugar sculptures, now couldn't even grip her knife. The kitchen door burst open as owner Levi Taylor strode in, his presence commanding immediate attention. His eyes widened as he saw Penelope's pale face. Before anyone could react, her knees buckled, and she collapsed, sending a tray of carefully plated dishes crashing to the floor. In the sudden silence that followed, a young boy's voice pierced through the kitchen. Mum Hudson, who had been waiting in the staff area to walk his mother home, rushed to her side. Levi reached her first, cradling her head as Hudson knelt beside them, tears streaming down his face. As the restaurant staff gathered around, whispers began to circulate. "She's been working double shifts," someone murmured. "Did you know she hasn't eaten all day?" another added. "She gave her lunch to that homeless man outside." But it was the crumpled paper that fell from Penelope's pocket that made Levi's blood run cold. A medical report, its edges worn from constant handling, bore the cruel verdict: stage I cancer. The date showed she'd known for weeks but hadn't told anyone, not even her son. In that moment, as the smoke cleared and the chaos settled, 3 lives stood on the precipice of change. A successful restaurateur faced with his mentor's mortality, a dedicated mother fighting her own battles in silence, and a young boy caught between childhood and responsibilities no child should bear. The night that began with burning dishes would end up igniting a chain of events that would test the limits of love, loyalty, and the true meaning of family. Copyrightory. As this story touches your heart, consider joining our storytelling family. Each subscription fuels our passion to share more powerful narratives that celebrate human resilience, love, and redemption. Together, let's explore the depths of emotions through stories that matter. The story of Levi Taylor's ascent from poverty to culinary stardom began in the narrow streets of Chicago's South Side. At 15, he was just another hungry kid, walking past restaurants with empty pockets and a growling stomach. After losing his parents in a tragic accident when he was just 1, Levi was raised by his grandmother, Nora Taylor, a woman whose wealth lay not in her bank account but in her boundless love and culinary wisdom. Their small apartment, barely maintained by his grandmother's meager pension, became a sanctuary of flavors and lessons. While other kids played baseball in the streets, young Levi stood on a wooden stool beside his grandmother, learning how each ingredient told its own story. Cooking isn't just about feeding the body, Nora would say, guiding his small hands as they kneaded dough. It's about nourishing the soul. The hardships were relentless. There were nights when dinner consisted of little more than watered-down soup and stale bread. Yet even in those moments of scarcity, Nora taught Levi to find beauty in simplicity. She showed him how a pinch of herbs could transform the humblest meal into something special. These lessons, born of necessity, would later become the foundation of his culinary philosophy. Tragedy struck again when Nora passed away in her sleep, leaving 16-year-old Levi alone in the world. The day after her funeral, with tears still fresh in his eyes, he began his desperate search for work. 27 restaurants rejected him before Penelope Clark saw something special in the determined young man standing in her kitchen, clutching his grandmother's worn recipe book. Under Penelope's guidance at the Hidden Spice, Levy's raw talent bloomed. He worked every position in the kitchen, from dishwasher to prep cook, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. His dedication caught the attention of not just the staff but also the customers, who began requesting dishes specifically prepared by the young chef with the soulful touch. Years of relentless work, studying and saving every penny finally led Levy to culinary school in New York. He lived in a tiny apartment, worked 3 jobs, and still managed to graduate top of his class. His innovative approach to traditional dishes, combining his grandmother's home-style cooking with modern techniques, earned him recognition in the culinary world. But success didn't come without its share of betrayals and setbacks. A failed partnership with a fraudulent investor nearly bankrupted him. Yet, remembering his grandmother's words about persistence, Levi rebuilt from scratch. He returned to Chicago, not as the hungry boy who once roamed its streets, but as a chef determined to create something meaningful. When the Taylor's opened its doors, it wasn't just another high-end restaurant. Every dish on the menu told a story of struggle, perseverance, and love. The signature dish, Nora's Comfort, was a refined version of the simple soup his grandmother made during their hardest times. Critics raved about its sophisticated simplicity, unaware of the years of poverty that inspired it. Now at 32, Levi Taylor stood at the helm of Chicago's most celebrated restaurant. His success allowed him to create a scholarship fund for underprivileged youth interested in culinary arts, remembering how a single opportunity from Penelope changed his life. Yet, despite his achievements, he never forgot the taste of those hungry days or the warm embrace of his grandmother's tiny kitchen. In a hidden corner of his office, away from the Michelin stars and glowing reviews, sat his grandmother's old recipe book, its pages now yellow with age, but still containing the wisdom that shaped his journey. Each morning, before the chaos of service began, Levi would touch its worn cover, a reminder that true success isn't measured by the grandeur of one's achievements, but by the lives one touches along the way. The young boy who once couldn't afford a proper meal had become a man who fed thousands, yet his greatest satisfaction came not from the accolades, but from the moments when he could share a meal with someone in need, remembering the kindness that saved him when he needed it most. Penelope Clark wasn't just another chef in Chicago's culinary landscape, she was a beacon of hope for those who dared to dream beyond their circumstances. Before her world unraveled, she owned the Hidden Spice, a modest restaurant that food critics praised not for its luxury, but for its soul. Her philosophy was simple yet profound: every dish must tell a story, every flavor must touch a memory. When 16-year-old Levi Taylor walked into her kitchen, Penelope saw beyond his threadbare clothes and desperate eyes. While other restaurant owners saw a liability, she recognized the same hunger for excellence that had driven her own journey. The day she hired him changed not just his life, but became the defining moment of her own legacy. Their relationship transcended the typical mentor-apprentice dynamic. During quiet moments between services, Penelope shared not just recipes, but life lessons. Cooking is like life, she would say, demonstrating how to balance flavors. Too much of anything, even something good, can ruin the whole dish. The secret is in finding harmony. Under her guidance, Levi learned the fundamentals that no culinary school could teach. She showed him how to listen to the sizzle of a perfect sear, how to smell when a sauce was reaching its peak, and most importantly, how to cook with empathy. Remember, she'd often say, "We're not just feeding stomachs, we're nurturing souls." The turning point in their relationship came during a particularly harsh Chicago winter. When Levy caught pneumonia but insisted on working to keep his apartment, Penelope took him into her own home. For 3 weeks, she nursed him back to health, sharing stories of her own struggles and triumphs. It was during these intimate moments that she became more than a mentor, she became family. Penelope's influence extended beyond the kitchen. She helped Levi apply for culinary school scholarships, wrote glowing recommendations, and spent countless hours helping him perfect his techniques. When he doubted himself, her unwavering faith became his anchor. "Talent without confidence is like a recipe without salt," she would remind him. But life had cruel twists in store for Penelope. Just as Levi was beginning to soar, her own world began to crumble. Her marriage to James Wilson, who seemed perfect on paper, revealed its toxic nature. As Levi pursued his dreams in New York, Penelope faced her own battles in silence, too proud to reach out for help. The last time Levi saw her before their paths diverged was at his culinary school graduation. She sat in the audience, beaming with pride, hiding the bruises under carefully applied makeup. That day she gave him her most prized possession, her grandfather's antique chef's knife, its handle worn smooth by generations of use. "Remember where you came from?" she said, "but never let it limit where you can go." After that day, Penelope disappeared from the culinary world. Rumors circulated. Some said she'd moved abroad. Others whispered about personal troubles. Levi searched for her, but each lead turned cold. Her absence left a void that success couldn't fill. In his restaurant, he kept a framed photo of them together at the Hidden Spice, a reminder of the woman who saw greatness in a hungry boy. Years later, when asked about his influences, Levi always began with Penelope Clark. "She taught me that cooking is an act of love," he would say. "Everything I create has her influence, her spirit of generosity and attention to detail." In his menu, certain dishes carried subtle tributes to her teachings. A sauce here, a technique, their silent homages to the woman who shaped his culinary soul. What Levi didn't know was that fate would soon bring their paths together again, under circumstances neither could have imagined. The story of Penelope Clark in his life wasn't over. It was merely waiting for its next chapter, one that would test everything she had taught him about compassion, resilience, and the healing power of food. The Taylors had become more than just Chicago's premier fine dining establishment. It was a testament to the American dream. The restaurant's elegant facade concealed the daily drama of professional kitchen life, where every service was a carefully orchestrated dance of precision and passion. Levi Taylor, now a respected figure in the culinary world, ran his kitchen with a unique blend of discipline and compassion, traits inherited from both his grandmother and Penelope. The current state of affairs found Levi at a crossroads. Despite his success, a gnawing emptiness persisted. The absence of his mentor still haunted him. His recent decision to hire Penelope Clark, unaware of her true identity due to her using her maiden name, had set in motion a series of events that would shake the foundation of his carefully constructed world. In the bustling kitchen, Penelope worked tirelessly, her expertise evident despite her weakened condition. Her colleagues knew her as Sarah Thompson, a quiet, hard-working line cook who never complained and often stayed late to help others. The weight of her secret identity and illness bore heavily on her shoulders, yet her passion for cooking remained undiminished. Hudson, her 12-year-old son, spent his afternoons in the staff break room, doing homework between helping with small tasks around the restaurant. The boy's mature demeanor and quiet dignity touched everyone who met him, though few knew of the burdens he carried watching his mother's health decline while trying to maintain his grades and help earn money for their survival. The restaurant staff formed a complex web of relationships. Marcus Bennett, the executive chef directly under Levi, harbored both respect and resentment toward his boss's success. His harsh treatment of Penelope stemmed partly from professional jealousy, sensing her superior skill despite her humble position. The other line cooks alternated between admiration for her work ethic and curiosity about her mysterious past. Behind the scenes, financial pressures mounted as a rival restaurant group attempted to undermine the Taylors' reputation. Food critics, once loyal supporters, began publishing increasingly critical reviews, influenced by competitors' manipulation. These challenges forced Levi to work longer hours, leaving him less time to notice the growing crisis within his own kitchen. The dynamic between Levi and Penelope, though they barely interacted directly, crackled with unspoken tension. Each time he passed through the kitchen, she would turn away, muscle memory from years of culinary work hiding her instinctive reaction to his presence. Meanwhile, Levi found himself strangely drawn to this quiet new hire, sensing something familiar in her technique that he couldn't quite place. Hudson observed everything with eyes wise beyond his years. He noticed how his mother's hands shook more each day, how she tried to hide her pain behind a professional mask. He saw the respect Levi commanded and dreamed of a future where he could provide such security for his mother. The boy's quiet presence in the restaurant became a reminder of both hope and urgency. The situation teetered on a knife's edge. Penelope's deteriorating health threatened to expose her identity at any moment. Hudson struggled to maintain his composure as he watched his mother push herself beyond her limits. And Levi, despite his success, sensed that something significant was about to change in his carefully ordered world. This complex web of relationships, secrets, and unspoken truths created an atmosphere of mounting tension within the restaurant's walls. Each service brought them closer to the inevitable moment when truth would break through the carefully maintained facade, forcing everyone to confront their past, present, and uncertain future. The autumn wind whipped through Chicago's streets as Hudson Thompson stood outside the tailor's, clutching a small box of handmade chocolates. His worn backpack, heavy with school books, pulled at his thin shoulders. Through the restaurant's gleaming windows, he could see elegantly dressed patrons enjoying meals that cost more than his family's weekly food budget. For 3 days, he had been watching the restaurant, gathering courage. He'd seen how the staff shooed away street vendors and beggars, but something about the owner's face, glimpsed briefly through the window, gave him hope. Hudson had inherited his mother's ability to read people, and in Levi Taylor's expression, he saw kindness beneath the successful exterior. The day had been particularly difficult. At school, his classmates had mocked his threadbare clothes and the free lunch card he tried to hide. But it was the sound of his mother's cough that morning, harsh and deep, that drove him to take this risk. The doctor's bills were piling up, and their landlord's patience was wearing thin. Taking a deep breath, Hudson straightened his second-hand jacket and approached the entrance. The maitre d', James, immediately sized him up with a dismissive glance. "The service entrance is around back," he said curtly, assuming Hudson was a delivery boy. "No soliciting allowed here." "I'm not delivering anything," Hudson replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Taylor, please. It's important." He pulled out one of his hand-wrapped chocolates, made from his grandmother's recipe that his mother had taught him. "I make these myself." James's expression hardened. "Listen, kid, Mr. Taylor is a busy man. He doesn't have time for..." But Hudson stood his ground, channeling the quiet determination he'd learned from watching his mother face countless obstacles. "Please," Hudson interrupted, his voice carrying a maturity that gave James pause. 5 minutes, that's all I ask. If he's not interested, I'll leave and never come back." The sincerity in his eyes made James hesitate. At that moment, Marcus Bennett, the executive chef, emerged from the kitchen. "Is there a problem here?" he demanded, his authoritative presence making Hudson seem even smaller. "This young man insists on speaking with Mr. Taylor," James explained, embarrassment coloring his tone. "Says it's important." Marcus approached Hudson, his chef's whites immaculate, his expression stern. "We don't buy from street vendors." Policy. His words were clipped, dismissive. Hudson felt tears threatening but held them back. "I'm not just selling chocolate, sir. I have a proposal for Mr. Taylor. A business proposal." The words sounded more confident than he felt. The exchange had drawn the attention of nearby diners, some watching with disapproval, others with curiosity. A well-dressed woman at a corner table frowned, whispering to her companion about proper screening of visitors. Just as Marcus was about to escort Hudson out, Levi Taylor emerged from his office, drawn by the unusual commotion in his normally smooth-running establishment. He took in the scene, the defensive stance of his staff, the determined set of Hudson's jaw, the judgmental glances from his patrons. "What's going on here?" Levi's voice was quiet but carried authority. Before anyone could answer, his eyes met Hudson's, and something in the boy's expression stopped him. He saw a reflection of his own past, the same desperate hope, the same determination to create opportunity where none existed. "Mr. Taylor," Hudson began, his voice trembling slightly but growing stronger with each word, "my name is Hudson Thompson. I make these chocolates using my grandmother's recipe." He held out the small box, its corners slightly crushed from his nervous grip. "I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for a chance." The restaurant had grown quiet. The usual dinner service murmur hushed as everyone waited for Levi's response. In that moment, time seemed to suspend, the space between success and failure, hope and disappointment, hanging by a thread. Levi stepped forward, taking the offered box. The wrapping was simple but careful, each chocolate individually wrapped with obvious attention to detail. He opened one, noting the professional sheen of the chocolate, the subtle aroma that spoke of proper tempering skills that shouldn't belong to a street vendor, much less a child. "Come into my office," Hudson Levy said finally, his voice gentle. "Let's talk about that proposal of yours." As he guided the boy toward his office, he caught sight of Marcus's disapproving frown and James's surprised expression. But it was the relief in Hudson's eyes that confirmed he'd made the right choice. What none of them knew was that this simple act of kindness would set in motion events that would change all their lives forever. Inside Levy's office, Hudson's initial relief quickly turned to anxiety as Marcus Bennett barged in uninvited, his face flushed with barely contained anger. "Mr. Taylor, with all due respect, we can't let every street vendor with a sob story interrupt our service," he declared, casting a dismissive glance at Hudson. Levi raised his hand to silence Marcus, but the damage was already done. Hudson's shoulders tensed as Marcus continued his tirade. "We've had 3 health code inspections this month. Bringing in unregulated food products could jeopardize our standing, not to mention the precedent it sets." "I tested everything myself," Hudson spoke up, his voice small but determined. "Mom taught me about food safety. She used to..." He caught himself, remembering his mother's warning to keep their past private. The slip didn't go unnoticed by Levi, who leaned forward with interest. James, the maitre d', appeared at the door with an urgent message. "Sir, there's a situation in the kitchen. Chef Thompson has collapsed." The news sent a jolt through Hudson, but before he could react, Marcus seized the opportunity. "You see? This is what happens when we're distracted by unnecessary interruptions. The kitchen needs your attention." Mr. Taylor. Marcus's words carried a weight of accusation, as if Hudson's presence had somehow caused the crisis. Levi stood, torn between his responsibilities as a restaurateur and his instinct to help this determined young boy. "Hudson, wait here. We'll continue our discussion shortly." But as he left, Marcus remained behind, his presence looming over Hudson like a storm cloud. "Listen, kid," Marcus began, his voice dripping with condescension. "I don't know what game you're playing, but the Taylors isn't a charity. We have standards to maintain." He picked up one of Hudson's chocolates, examining it with exaggerated skepticism. "Did you really make these, or did you just repackage store-bought candy?" Hudson's face burned with humiliation. "My mother taught me. It's my grandmother's recipe. We used to." Again, he stopped himself, but Marcus seized on his hesitation. "Your mother? The same one who just collapsed in our kitchen?" Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Wait a minute." He strode to the door, calling for security. "I want this boy escorted out, and someone check the kitchen for missing inventory." The accusation hit Hudson like a physical blow. "I didn't steal anything," he protested, but his words were drowned out by the arrival of 2 security guards. Tears threatened to spill, but he held them back, remembering his mother's words about dignity in the face of injustice. As the guards approached, Hudson caught glimpses of the kitchen through the office windows. He saw his mother being helped to her feet, her face pale but determined. Their eyes met briefly across the distance, and in that moment both their hearts broke, hers for the humiliation her son was enduring, his for the weakness he saw in her usually strong frame. "Please," Hudson tried one last time, addressing the empty doorway where Levi had disappeared. "I just wanted to help my mom. She's sick, and we can't afford," but his words were cut short as the guards began to escort him out. The walk through the restaurant felt endless. Diners stared, some with pity, others with disdain. Hudson's box of chocolates, carefully crafted over several nights, lay forgotten on Levy's desk. Each step toward the exit felt like abandoning not just his hopes, but his mother's legacy. Outside, the autumn wind had turned bitter. One of the guards, perhaps feeling a twinge of conscience, spoke softly. "Kid, try the community center on 43rd Street. They have programs that might help." Hudson stood alone on the sidewalk, watching through the windows as normal service resumed, his presence already forgotten by most. But something in him refused to be defeated. He thought of his mother, working through her illness, never complaining. He thought of the hours they'd spent perfecting their chocolate recipes, finding joy even in their hardest times. As he turned to leave, he caught sight of his mother through the kitchen window, now back at her station, her movements slower but still graceful. She was fighting her own battles, he realized, just as he was fighting his. The rejection and humiliation burned, but they also ignited something else, a determination to find another way, to prove Marcus and the others wrong. What Hudson couldn't know was that this moment of apparent defeat would soon become the catalyst for profound changes in all their lives. Sometimes, he would later realize, the harshest rejections lead to the most unexpected opportunities. Levi Taylor found himself distracted during the evening service, his thoughts returning to the young chocolate maker and his mysterious connection to Sarah Thompson, his new line cook. There was something hauntingly familiar about both of them, something that tugged at memories he couldn't quite grasp. After ensuring Sarah was stable and insisting she take the rest of the night off, Levi returned to his office to find it empty, save for the abandoned box of chocolates. Opening it, he discovered a handwritten note beneath the carefully arranged pieces recipe by Eleanor Thompson, perfected by Penelope Clark, made with love by Hudson. The name hit him like a physical blow. Penelope Clark. His hands trembling, Levi examined the chocolates more closely. The technique, the subtle balance of flavors, it was impossible, yet unmistakable. These were the same chocolates Penelope had taught him to make all those years ago. Without waiting for his driver, Levi grabbed his coat and rushed out into the Chicago night. He found Hudson sitting on a park bench 3 blocks away, shoulders hunched against the cold, trying to complete his homework under a streetlight. "Your mother," Levi said softly, approaching the bench. "She taught you to temper chocolate using a marble slab, didn't she?" Hudson's head snapped up, surprise and wariness warring in his expression. "How did you?" Hudson began, then straightened his spine, adopting the protective stance of someone used to defending his family. "Yes, sir. She said it was the proper way, even if it takes longer." Levi sat down, maintaining a respectful distance, and the ganache. You heat the cream just until bubbles form around the edges, then pour it over the chopped chocolate in 3 stages. The boy's eyes widened in recognition of the specific technique. "That's exactly what Mom says. She learned it from." Hudson hesitated, years of keeping secrets making him cautious. "From Penelope Clark," Levi finished quietly. "Who taught it to me? 20 years ago, in a kitchen not unlike mine." He pulled out one of Hudson's chocolates, its surface glossy even in the dim light. "This isn't just about selling chocolates, is it, Hudson?" The boy's careful composure cracked slightly. "Mom's sick," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "She works so hard, but the medical bills, I thought if I could show you what we can make, maybe." His voice trailed off, the weight of his responsibilities overwhelming him. Levy's heart ached, remembering his own desperate attempts to help his grandmother. "Your mother, Sarah Thompson, she's not really Sarah, is she?" he asked gently. Hudson's silence was answer enough. Levi continued, the way she moves in the kitchen, her attention to detail, the quiet corrections she makes to help others improve. I should have recognized it sooner. She's Penelope Clark. Tears finally spilled from Hudson's eyes. Please don't fire her, he pleaded. She needs this job. She doesn't know I came to you. She always says we have to make it on our own, but I can't just watch her get sicker. Levi placed a hand on Hudson's shoulder, the gesture bridging years of mentorship passed down through generations. Hudson, 20 years ago, your mother saved my life by giving me a chance when no one else would. Tonight, you've given me the opportunity to repay that debt. Standing, Levi held out his hand to the boy. Come on. Let's go see your mother. It's time for all of us to stop pretending we don't know who we are to each other. As they walked back to the restaurant, Levi made a series of calls. By morning, Penelope would have an appointment with the city's best oncologist. By the end of the week, she and Hudson would move into the apartment above the restaurant. But most importantly, starting immediately, they would no longer face their battles alone. Hudson looked up at Levi, hope beginning to replace exhaustion in his young face. Mr. Taylor? Those chocolates, they're really not bad, are they? Levi smiled. Remembering Penelope's words from long ago, cooking his love made visible, he pulled another chocolate from his pocket, sharing it with Hudson as they walked. They're perfect, Hudson. Just like your mother taught us both. That night marked the beginning of a new chapter for all of them, one where past and present would merge, where old debts would be repaid, and where the true meaning of family would be redefined through the healing power of food and forgiveness. The announcement of a special private dinner at the Taylors sent ripples of curiosity through the staff. Levi had reserved the entire restaurant for just 2 guests, something unprecedented in the establishment's history. Marcus Bennett, still smarting from the earlier confrontation, watched with barely concealed disapproval as Levi personally oversaw every detail of the preparation. Everything must be perfect, Levi instructed, his usual composed demeanor tinged with nervous energy. The private dining room transformed under his direction, soft lighting, the finest linens, and centerpieces featuring Penelope's favorite flowers, white lilies, mixed with sprigs of fresh herbs, a detail he'd remembered from years ago. In the kitchen, Levi immersed himself in creating a menu that told their shared story. Each dish was a carefully chosen memory, the tomato bisque that Penelope had taught him to make during his first week as her apprentice, the herb-crusted lamb that had won him his first cooking competition under her guidance, and for dessert, a sophisticated reimagining of Hudson's chocolates. The staff watched in amazement as their usually collected boss fussed over every detail. He personally polished each piece of silverware, adjusted each napkin fold, and tasted every sauce multiple times. Mr. Taylor, Marcus ventured, shouldn't we know who these VIP guests are, for security purposes? Levi paused, his hand hovering over a wine glass he'd been inspecting. Tonight isn't about VIPs, Marcus. It's about paying a debt that can never truly be repaid. His cryptic response only fueled the speculation among the staff. In the apartment above the restaurant, Hudson helped his mother prepare for the evening, his heart racing with the knowledge of what was to come. Penelope, still known to most as Sarah, sat at her vanity, her hands trembling slightly as she applied makeup to cover the pallor of her illness. "Mum, you look beautiful," Hudson assured her, helping her with the clasp of a simple necklace, one of the few pieces of jewelry she'd kept from better days. Penelope smiled at her son's reflection, seeing in him the strength she sometimes feared she was losing. "I don't understand why Mr. Taylor would invite us to dinner," she said softly, still unaware that her true identity had been discovered. "It's too much, Hudson. The apartment, the medical appointments he's arranged, people will talk." Hudson swallowed hard, keeping his secret. "Maybe he just knows talent when he sees it," he suggested, straightening his borrowed tie. The new clothes Levi had sent for them both lay on the bed, simple but elegant attire that made them look like proper restaurant guests rather than employees. As the hour approached, Levi stood in his office, holding Penelope's old chef's knife, the one she'd given him at graduation. He'd kept it maintained perfectly, and now it would serve as part of tonight's revelation. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "The table is ready," Sir James announced, his earlier disdain for Hudson replaced by curiosity about the evening's mysterious proceedings. "And Chef Bennett is asking about service preparations." "Tell Marcus to take the night off," Levi replied, surprising everyone. "I'll be cooking personally tonight." The murmurs among the staff grew louder. Levi Taylor hadn't cooked a full service himself since opening the restaurant. In the kitchen, Levi began his preparations with the focus of a man performing a sacred ritual. Each ingredient was precisely measured, each technique executed with purpose. The kitchen staff watched in silent awe as their boss transformed into the chef he'd been trained to be, his movements echoing the graceful efficiency they'd noticed in Sarah Thompson. As the sun set over Chicago, casting long shadows through the restaurant's windows, Levi completed his final preparations. The menu cards, handwritten in his best script, told not just what would be served, but why each dish accompanied by a memory, a lesson learned, a moment shared between mentor and student. "Hudson and MS. Thompson will be arriving in 10 minutes, James announced, his curiosity barely contained. Levi nodded, removing his chef's coat and replacing it with a crisp jacket. Tonight would be about more than food, it would be about healing, reconciliation, and the debts that bind us together. What no one in the restaurant knew, except for Hudson and Levi, was that this dinner would mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As Levi made his final adjustments to the table setting, he whispered a quiet prayer that Penelope would understand why he had orchestrated this evening, and that she would accept the help she had once so freely given to him. At precisely 7 o'clock, Hudson and Penelope entered the Taylors', greeted by an unusual silence. The normally bustling restaurant was empty save for a single table, beautifully set in the center of the main dining room. Penelope, still known to the staff as Sarah Thompson, clutched her son's hand tightly, feeling oddly vulnerable in her borrowed finery. The first shock came when they saw the menu cards. Penelope's hand flew to her mouth as she read the titles of dishes she hadn't thought about in years. The hidden spiced tomato bisque, Nora's legacy lamb, and midnight kitchen chocolates. Each one a carefully preserved memory from her past life. "Hudson," she whispered, her voice trembling. "How did he—" But before she could finish her question, Levi emerged from the kitchen, carrying not plates but a worn, leather-bound recipe book she'd thought lost forever. Her recipe book. "Welcome home," Penelope Levi said softly, his voice carrying across the silent room. The few staff members present gasped audibly. Sarah Thompson, the quiet line cook who'd worked alongside them for months, was the legendary Penelope Clark. Penelope swayed slightly, her composure cracking. "Levi? You." You knew. Her eyes darted between her son and her former apprentice, understanding dawning in her face. "Hudson, did you?" "I'm sorry, Mom," Hudson burst out, tears threatening. "I had to do something. You were getting sicker, and I remembered the stories you used to tell about teaching Levi Taylor, and when I saw him I thought maybe." Levi stepped forward, still holding the recipe book. "He didn't tell me, Penelope. You did every time you corrected a sauce without being asked, every time you adjusted someone's knife technique with that slight tilt of your head." He smiled gently. "I should have recognized you sooner. No one else ever taught me that a pinch of nutmeg was the secret to perfect bechamel." Penelope's legs gave way, and Levi quickly guided her to a chair. The staff watched, transfixed, as their boss knelt beside the woman they'd known as the quiet line cook. "Why didn't you come to me?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "All these years I searched for you." "I couldn't," she whispered, tears flowing freely now. "After James, my husband, after he destroyed everything, took everything, I was ashamed. You were so successful, and I had failed so completely. I couldn't bear for you to see what I'd become." Failed, Levi's voice rose slightly. "Penelope, look at your son. Look at how he fights for you, how he carries himself with the same dignity you taught me. You haven't failed at anything." He opened the recipe book to a page marked with a faded photograph of young Levi and Penelope in the hidden spice kitchen, both laughing as they attempted to perfect a souffle. "You saved my life," he continued. "You showed me that cooking wasn't just about survival, but about creating moments of joy for others. Everything I am, everything I built, started with you believing in a hungry kid who had nothing to offer but determination." Hudson watched the scene unfold, his young heart understanding for the first time the full weight of his mother's legacy. The staff, too, stood mesmerized as pieces of a puzzle they hadn't known existed fell into place. Penelope touched the photograph with trembling fingers. "I kept this recipe book through everything," she admitted. "Even when we were living in shelters, I couldn't let it go. It reminded me of who I used to be." "You still are that person," Levi insisted, producing the chef's knife she'd given him at graduation. "This knife has prepared thousands of meals, but it's never felt right in my hands. It was waiting for you to come home." As if drawn by an invisible force, Penelope's hand wrapped around the familiar handle. The weight of it, the balance she'd known so well, broke the last of her reserves. She fell into Levi's embrace, sobbing not just from sadness, but from relief at finally being known, being found, being home. Hudson joined them, and Levi pulled him into the embrace. The staff quietly withdrew, understanding they were witnessing something deeply personal. Through her tears, Penelope looked up at her former apprentice, now a successful chef and restaurateur, and saw in his eyes the same kindness that had prompted her to give a chance to a desperate teenager so many years ago. "Now," Levi said, helping her to her feet, "let me cook for you, both of you. And then we'll talk about your new position as head of culinary development for the Taylor's Restaurant Group." Penelope's eyes widened, but Levi held up a hand to stop her protests. "The doctor says you need less physical strain, but can still work. Your mind, your palate, your creativity, those are the gifts I need. Plus," he added with a smile, "someone needs to keep teaching me. I still can't get that souffle quite right." For the first time in years, Penelope Clark laughed freely, the sound echoing through the restaurant like music. The circle of giving and receiving, of teaching and learning, of falling and rising, had come full circle. The hours following the recognition scene transformed the Taylors into a sanctuary of healing and reconciliation. As Levi served each carefully prepared dish, the stories flowed freely between them, filling in the years of separation with both laughter and tears. "Remember the night we had to remake 50 souffles because I forgot to check the oven temperature?" Levi asked, serving the tomato bisque with the same flourish Penelope had taught him. Hudson watched in fascination as his mother's eyes lit up with the memory. "You stayed until dawn, determined to get it right," Penelope recalled, her voice stronger now. "I knew then that you had what it takes, not just skill, but heart." She tasted the soup, and tears welled in her eyes. "You remembered every detail." The staff, though dismissed for the evening, found reasons to linger. Through the kitchen windows, they watched their boss transform from the stern perfectionist they knew into someone else entirely, a student honoring his teacher, a son reuniting with a lost mother figure. Marcus Bennett, who had refused to leave, stood in the corner, his earlier hostility replaced by confusion and a grudging respect. He watched as Penelope gently corrected Levi's plating of the main course, her gestures achingly familiar. "All these months," he muttered, "I've been learning from her without knowing who she was." As the evening progressed, Hudson began sharing stories of their harder times, nights spent in shelters, days when they had nothing but their shared love of cooking to sustain them. Mum would create imaginary menus, he revealed, his young voice steady. We'd pretend to run our own restaurant, even when dinner was just bread and soup. Penelope reached for her son's hand. "You never complained, not once," she said softly. "Even when things were at their worst, you found ways to make me smile." The pride in her voice made Hudson sit straighter. Levi listened intently, his heart heavy with the knowledge of their struggles. "Why Chicago?" he asked finally. "Of all places, why risk coming back here?" Penelope was quiet for a moment, absently tracing the pattern on her napkin. "Because this is where I last felt whole," she admitted. And because she hesitated, looking at Hudson, I wanted him to see that failure doesn't have to be the end of the story. "You never failed," Mum Hudson interjected fiercely. "You survived. You kept us together. You taught me everything important," his words, so adult in their understanding, brought fresh tears to everyone's eyes. As Levi served the dessert, an elegant chocolate creation inspired by Hudson's own recipe, the conversation turned to the future. "The apartment above the restaurant is yours for as long as you want it," Levi insisted. "And Hudson, I hear you're quite good at mathematics. The private school 3 blocks away has an excellent science program." Penelope began to protest, but Levi held up his hand. "This isn't charity, Penelope. This is investment in talent. Hudson has your gift, your passion. And you have so much still to teach, not just to me, but to everyone here." The evening wound down as midnight approached. The kitchen staff, who had pretended to clean while eavesdropping, finally began to disperse. Marcus was the last to leave, pausing by their table, a mess clerk. He said formally, "I owe you an apology. Several, actually. Would you consider teaching me that sauce technique you tried to show me last week? I'm ready to learn now." Penelope's smile was radiant. "Tomorrow, Marcus. We'll start fresh tomorrow." After everyone had gone, the 3 of them sat in the quiet restaurant, the remnants of their meal before them. Hudson had fallen asleep in his chair, emotionally exhausted but peaceful. Penelope watched her son with infinite tenderness. "I've missed so much," Levi said softly. 15 years of your life, of your struggles. I should have looked harder, should have found you sooner." Penelope reached across the table, taking his hand. "Perhaps the timing is perfect just as it is. Sometimes we need to lose everything to remember who we truly are." She looked around the restaurant, her eyes bright. "You've built something beautiful here, Levi. Something that honors everything we believed in back then." "No," Levi corrected gently. "We are going to build something beautiful. Together. The way it always should have been." As they prepared to head upstairs to their new home, Penelope paused in the kitchen doorway. Her hand traced the smooth steel of the prep table, and for a moment she was transported back to the hidden spice, teaching a young Levi how to brunoise vegetables. "Welcome home," Levi repeated softly, understanding the weight of the moment. Penelope smiled, a real smile that erased years of worry from her face. "It's good to be home," she whispered. "It's good to finally be home." In the weeks following the reunion, the full extent of Penelope's past began to emerge like layers of an onion being carefully peeled away. Late one evening, after service had ended, Levi found her sitting alone in the darkened kitchen, holding a worn leather wallet. James seemed perfect at first, she began without preamble, sensing Levi's presence behind her. He was charming, successful, and he loved food as much as I did. Or so I thought. Her fingers traced the edges of a faded photograph showing a younger, radiant version of herself standing proudly in front of the hidden spice. After we married, things changed gradually. It started with small criticisms about the restaurant's finances, suggestions that we needed to cut corners. Her voice remained steady, but her hands trembled. Then came the gambling. Small bets at first, then larger ones. He said he was investing in our future. Levi pulled up a chair, sitting quietly beside his mentor. The night staff had gone home, leaving them alone in the space that had become their sanctuary. Through the window, Chicago's lights twinkled like distant stars. "The day you left for New York was the day he emptied our accounts," Penelope continued. "Everything I'd built, everything I'd saved gone in a single afternoon." But that wasn't the worst part. She paused, taking a shaking breath. "He'd been borrowing money from loan sharks, using the restaurant as collateral without my knowledge." The revelation hit Levi like a physical blow. The hidden spice, that's why it closed so suddenly. The legendary restaurant's mysterious closure had been the subject of industry gossip for years. Penelope nodded, tears falling silently. They gave me a choice sign over everything, or they'd hurt Hudson. He was only 4, then her voice broke. I signed. Every property, every asset, even my grandmother's recipes. James disappeared the next day, leaving me to face the consequences alone. "Why didn't you report him to the police?" Levi asked gently, already suspecting the answer. "He made sure my name was on all the illegal documents. If I talked, I'd go to prison, and Hudson would end up in the system." She laughed bitterly. He was thorough in his betrayal. The story continued to unfold, years of moving from city to city, taking whatever job she could find, always looking over her shoulder. "The loan sharks kept finding us," she explained. "Even after James died of an overdose in Las Vegas, they claimed I still owed his debts." "They followed you to Chicago," Levi's voice tightened with concern. "No, Chicago was different. I came here because she hesitated, then reached into the wallet and pulled out a carefully preserved newspaper clipping. It was a review of the Taylor's opening night. I saw your success, your integrity. It gave me hope that everything I'd taught hadn't been wasted, but I was too ashamed to approach you directly." Levi stared at the clipping, noting how worn it was from repeated handling. "So you applied as Sarah Thompson?" "I needed to see for myself that you were okay, that at least one part of my life's work had survived," she smiled sadly. "I never intended to stay, but then Hudson loved the school here, and for the first time in years we felt safe." The kitchen fell silent as Levi absorbed the weight of her confession. Finally he spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "Those men, the ones who took everything, do they know you're here?" Penelope's silence was answer enough. Levi stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Give me their names," he demanded. "I have contacts now, lawyers who can." "No," Penelope cut him off firmly. "I won't risk everything again. Hudson is finally happy, finally has a chance at a normal life. The past needs to stay buried." But as she spoke, her hand unconsciously moved to her side, where the latest medical bills lay hidden in her pocket. The gesture wasn't lost on Levi, who had noticed her wincing during longer shifts. "The cancer," he said slowly. "It's not the first time, is it?" Penelope closed her eyes. 5 years ago in Detroit, we'd finally saved enough for treatment, and then they found us. The choice was treatment or keeping Hudson safe. A mother's choice is never really a choice at all. Levi knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "You're not alone anymore," he promised. "Whatever comes, we face it together, the way you taught me." "Levi," she whispered, "I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm telling." His voice was firm. 20 years ago you saw something in me worth saving. Now it's my turn. Those men, the cancer, whatever comes, we'll handle it. All of it." As if summoned by their conversation, Hudson appeared in the kitchen doorway, his school uniform still crisp despite the late hour. "Mom," he called softly, "I finished my homework. Can we practice that new chocolate technique now?" Penelope quickly wiped her eyes, but Hudson had already crossed the room to embrace her. "It's okay, Mom," he said with the wisdom of a child who had grown up too fast. "Mr. Taylor is right. We're not running anymore." Levi watched them, mother and son, their bond strengthened by years of hardship. In that moment he made a silent vow. The people who had destroyed Penelope's life wouldn't touch her again. His success, his resources, everything he'd built, it would all serve to protect the woman who had given him his start. "Come on," he said, standing and reaching for his chef's coat. "Let's see this chocolate technique. After all, Hudson's truffles are becoming quite famous with our regulars." As they began to work, the familiar rhythm of cooking bringing comfort to them all, Penelope felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not just for survival, but for a future where she could hold her head high again, where her son could dream without fear, and where the passion for cooking that had sustained them through their darkest days could once again bring joy. The kitchen, always her sanctuary, had become something more, a place of healing, of second chances, and a family forged through more than just blood. Hudson's first day at St. Margaret's Private Academy should have been a triumph. Instead, he stood in the pristine hallway, his new uniform feeling like a costume, watching his classmates whisper and point. Despite Levi's generosity in arranging his scholarship, the social divide was immediate and crushing. "Hey, kitchen boy," called out Thomas Bradford, son of one of the tailor's most prominent investors. "Did you bus any good tables lately?" The surrounding students snickered, their designer bags and expensive watches forming an invisible barrier between them and the newcomer. Hudson straightened his shoulders, remembering his mother's words about dignity. But dignity was hard to maintain when someone accidentally spilled juice on your only blazer, or when teachers assumed you needed remedial help despite your perfect entrance exam scores. During lunch periods, Hudson would sit alone, methodically eating the food he'd helped prepare in the tailor's kitchen that morning. He watched his classmates compare vacation plans and weekend activities, their lives so different from his evenings, spent studying while his mother worked. Sometimes he'd catch fragments of their conversations. "Did you hear? His mom's just a cook. I heard they lived in shelters. My father says they're charity cases." The academic challenges, at least, he could handle. Mathematics came naturally to him, years of calculating food costs and stretching budgets having honed his numerical skills. In chemistry, his understanding of cooking processes gave him an unexpected advantage. But social studies classes became minefields when discussions turned to economic inequality or social mobility. One particularly difficult day, during a class presentation on family businesses, Thomas interrupted Hudson's talk about the tailor's kitchen. "But it's not really your business, is it? You're just the help." The teacher's weak admonishment did nothing to erase the sting of truth in those words. That evening, Levi found Hudson in the restaurant's back office, surrounded by homework but staring blankly at the wall. "Rough day?" he asked, settling into the chair beside him. "Why did you send me there?" Hudson's voice was quiet but strained. "I don't belong with those kids. I'm not." "Not what?" Levi challenged gently. "Not rich? Neither was I. Not from their world? Neither was your mother when she started teaching at the Culinary Institute. Excellence doesn't care about your bank balance, Hudson." Hudson turned to face him, his young face etched with a maturity beyond his years. "But they do. And their parents do. I heard Mrs. Bradford telling her friends that having certain elements at St. Margaret's would damage its reputation." Levy's expression darkened. "Mrs. Bradford, who sends her steaks back 3 times every visit. The same Mrs. Bradford who can't tell a Bordeaux from a Burgundy but pretends she can." His attempt at humor fell flat as he saw tears threatening in Hudson's eyes. "Mom's getting worse," Hudson whispered. "I see her struggling during service, taking more breaks. But she won't stop working because of my tuition. Maybe if I went back to public school." "Stop," Levi interrupted firmly. "Your mother and I have already discussed this. Your education is not up for negotiation. As for the Bradfords and their friends," he paused, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Perhaps it's time they learned what real class looks like." The following week, the Taylors hosted a special parent-teacher dinner for St. Margaret's Academy. Hudson, to everyone's surprise, was put in charge of dessert service. As he confidently explained his chocolate creations to the assembled guests, his technical knowledge and artistic presentation left even his critics speechless. Mrs. Bradford, attempting to maintain her superiority, asked pointedly about his previous experience in service. Hudson smiled politely and launched into a detailed explanation of chocolate tempering temperatures and molecular gastronomy that left her baffled. Thomas, watching his mother's discomfort, shifted uneasily in his seat. The kitchen boy's quiet confidence was harder to mock when he was clearly in his element. When Hudson presented a special chocolate sculpture he'd created for the event, a detailed replica of the school's historic chapel, even Thomas had to admit it was kind of cool. Later that night, as Hudson and Levi cleaned up the kitchen, the boy finally smiled. "They're still not my friends," he admitted, "but maybe they'll stop being enemies." "You know what your mother taught me?" Levi asked. helping him wrap leftover chocolates. That the kitchen is the great equalizer. Rich or poor, everyone needs to eat. And when you can create something beautiful, something that brings joy to others, that's real power. Hudson nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. Is that why you made me handle service tonight? To show them I'm more than just. To show them who you are, Levi corrected. Not a charity case, not the help, but a young man with extraordinary talent and potential. Just like your mother saw in me. As they finished cleaning, Hudson paused by the kitchen door. Mr. Taylor, thank you. Not just for tonight, but for understanding. Levi watched him head upstairs to the apartment, knowing the boy's struggles were far from over, but something had shifted tonight in Hudson's confidence, in his classmates' perception, and in his understanding of his own worth. The next day at school, Thomas Bradford silently slid into the seat next to Hudson during lunch. So he said awkwardly, "Think you could explain that thing about chocolate crystals again? My sister's birthday is coming up, and I thought maybe." Hudson hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Perhaps his mother was right. Sometimes the best revenge was simply rising above, one carefully tempered chocolate at a time. The autumn months brought subtle changes to the Taylors' kitchen. What began as 3 separate lives gradually intertwined into something resembling a family, though none of them dared name it yet. Every morning, Levi would find Hudson and Penelope already at work in the prep kitchen, their synchronized movements speaking of years of working side by side. The lower the heat slightly, Penelope would murmur, and Hudson would adjust without looking up, their understanding transcending words. Levi often found himself pausing in the doorway, watching their quiet dance of knives and whisks, seeing echoes of his own apprenticeship in their interactions. The staff, initially wary of the changed dynamic, began to embrace the new normal. Marcus Bennett especially underwent a transformation. His previous antagonism melted away as Penelope patiently shared techniques she'd developed over decades. The secret she'd explain, demonstrating a particularly complex source, is understanding why each step matters, not just following instructions. One rainy Tuesday, during a slow lunch service, Marcus approached Penelope with an unusual request. "My daughter," he began awkwardly, "she's interested in cooking. Would you consider teaching her the way you taught Hudson?" Penelope's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Bring her tomorrow. We'll start with chocolate. It teaches patience and precision, the foundations of all good cooking." Soon the kitchen after hours became a classroom of sorts. Hudson and Marcus's daughter Emily worked side by side, while Penelope guided them through increasingly complex techniques. Levi would join when he could, sometimes learning, sometimes teaching, the roles of mentor and student flowing naturally between them all. The transformation extended beyond the kitchen. When Penelope had her bad days, fighting the exhaustion from her treatments, the entire staff rallied around her. Line cooks quietly covered her stations, servers brought her ginger tea, and even the dishwashers found excuses to check on her. Hudson's presence in the restaurant evolved too. His homework spot at the corner table became a gathering place for the staff's children during their breaks. He helped them with mathematics and science, while they included him in their conversations about movies and music, normal teenage things he'd missed during years of constant moving. One evening, during a particularly challenging service, everything threatened to fall apart. A critical piece of equipment failed, a large party arrived without a reservation, and 2 servers called in sick. In the midst of the chaos, Hudson calmly stepped in, expediting orders with a precision that left even the veteran staff impressed. "Where did you learn to handle pressure like that?" Marcus asked later, genuine admiration in his voice. Hudson shrugged, a small smile playing at his lips. "When you've lived in shelters and waited in food bank lines, a busy dinner service doesn't seem so scary." The comment could have created awkwardness, but instead it opened a flood of conversations. Staff members began sharing their own stories of struggle and survival. The kitchen became a place where past hardships were acknowledged without shame, where strength was measured not by where you came from, but by how far you'd come. Levy noticed other changes too. The way Penelope's laugh came more easily now, how Hudson's shoulders no longer carried the weight of constant worry. Even the food seemed to reflect their evolving relationships, dishes that combined Penelope's classical techniques with Levi's innovations and Hudson's creative touches. Late one night, after a particularly successful service, the three of them sat in the empty restaurant, sharing a meal as they often did now. Hudson was explaining his latest chocolate experiment, his hands moving expressively as he described the technique. "You know," Penelope said softly, "watching her son for years I thought I'd failed him, that my mistakes had stolen his childhood." "Look at him now," Levi replied. "Really look, he's not just surviving anymore, he's thriving. That's because of you, Penelope. You taught him the most important lesson, that family isn't about perfect circumstances, it's about perfect love." Tears glistened in Penelope's eyes as Hudson turned to them, his face alight with enthusiasm. "Mom, Mr. Taylor, you have to try this new filling I created. It's based on Grandma Eleanor's recipe, but with a twist." As they tasted Hudson's creation, exchanging looks of surprise and delight, Penelope realized something profound. The kitchen had always been her sanctuary, but now it had become something more, a place where broken pieces were being forged into something stronger, more beautiful than before. The bonds growing between them weren't just about cooking or survival anymore. They were about healing, about finding home in unexpected places, about creating family from the ingredients life gave you. Like the best recipes, it wasn't always perfect, but the imperfections only made it more authentic, more real. As they cleaned up together, their movements unconsciously synchronized, Levy caught Penelope's eye and nodded slightly. They both understood sometimes the most important families are the ones we choose, and the strongest bonds are forged not in perfect moments, but in shared struggles and silent understanding. The revelation came during a routine Wednesday service. Penelope was demonstrating a new plating technique to the line cooks when the room suddenly tilted sideways. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled violently as she gripped the counter. Before anyone could react, a stream of crimson splashed across the pristine white plate, not sauce, but blood from her nose. Mom Hudson's voice cut through the kitchen's chaos. He had been doing homework at his usual spot when he heard the clatter of falling plates. The sight of his mother's pale face and blood-stained chef's coat sent him racing across the kitchen, school papers scattering in his wake. Marcus Bennett, surprising everyone, took immediate command. "Clear the line. James, call an ambulance. Someone get Mr. Taylor." His voice, usually sharp with criticism, now carried genuine concern. The kitchen staff moved with practiced efficiency, but their faces betrayed their fear for the woman who had become their mentor and friend. Levi burst from his office, phone in hand. "Already speaking rapidly, Dr. Morrison?" "Yes, it's happening again." "No, worse than last time. We're bringing her in now." He reached Penelope's side just as her knees buckled. "Cancel the ambulance," he ordered. "I'm driving her myself." In the emergency room, under the harsh fluorescent lights, the full truth finally emerged. Dr. Morrison, a distinguished oncologist and regular patron of the Taylors, delivered the news with gentle directness. "The cancer has spread. The experimental treatment we've been trying. It's not working as we'd hoped." Hudson, who had refused to leave his mother's side, gripped her hand tighter. "But there are other treatments, right? Other options." His young voice cracked with desperation. Penelope tried to smile, though her lips trembled. "Hudson, sweetheart, we need to talk about something." She looked at Levi, who nodded encouragingly. "The treatments. They're very expensive. Even with insurance." "Money is not an issue," Levy interrupted firmly. "I've already told you this." But Penelope shook her head, her chef's pride still intact even in a hospital gown. "I can't let you keep." "Watch me," Levi challenged, his voice thick with emotion. 20 years ago you took a chance on a kid who had nothing. You fed me, taught me, believed in me when no one else did. Do you know what the Taylor's Restaurant Group is worth now? Do you have any idea how many lives you changed by helping that one hungry kid? The room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitors. Dr. Morrison cleared his throat. There's a new trial at Mayo Clinic, he offered. Very promising results with cases like yours. But he hesitated, glancing at Levi. But it's expensive and experimental, Penelope finished wearily, and probably won't be covered by insurance. I'm selling the Chicago property, Levy announced suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. The offer came in last week. It's more than enough to cover any treatment you need, with plenty left over for Hudson's education. Levi, no, Penelope tried to sit up, setting off a cascade of monitor alarms. The Chicago restaurant is your flagship, your dream. I won't let you sacrifice that for me. Properties can be rebuilt, Levi countered. Dreams can be reimagined. But some people are irreplaceable. His voice broke on the last word. Hudson, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. What about my college fund? All eyes turned to him. Mr. Taylor set up a trust for my education. Could we use that instead? Absolutely not, both adults said simultaneously, then shared a weak laugh at their unified response. Mom. Hudson continued, his young face set with determination. Remember what you always told me. That fancy schools don't matter as much as having the right teacher. Well, I have you. And Mr. Taylor. And a whole kitchen full of people willing to teach me. I don't need an expensive college if it means losing you. Penelope pulled her son close, her tears dampening his school uniform. My brilliant, beautiful boy, she whispered. When did you get so wise? Dr. Morrison, watching the scene unfold, cleared his throat again. The trial starts in 2 weeks. If you're interested, we need to make arrangements quickly. Levi stepped forward, his decision made. Make the arrangements, all of them. And doctor, he paused at the door. Money is no object. Whatever it takes, whatever she needs. Later that night, after Penelope had finally fallen asleep, Levi found Hudson in the hospital corridor, methodically making lists in his school notebook. What are you working on? He asked softly. Organizing, Hudson replied without looking up. Mom's treatment schedule, medication times, school assignments I can do remotely, and new recipes to help with chemotherapy side effects. Did you know ginger and turmeric can help with nausea? Levi sat beside him, noting how the boy's handwriting remained perfectly steady despite the tremor in his voice. You don't have to be strong all the time, Hudson. It's okay to be scared. The pencil stilled. If I start being scared, Hudson whispered, I might not be able to stop. Levi gently took the notebook, closing it. Your mother taught me something once about cooking and life. She said that sometimes the most important ingredient is the one you can't see, the love that holds everything together. Right now, that's our job, to be the invisible ingredient that helps her heal. Hudson finally looked up, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Will you help me keep the kitchen running? She'll want to know everything's okay when she comes back. The kitchen, the restaurant, your schooling, I'll handle it all, Levi promised. You just focus on being with your mom. That's your only job right now. As if to underscore the gravity of the situation, a nurse hurried past with fresh blood samples for the lab. Hudson watched her go, then squared his shoulders in a gesture so reminiscent of his mother that Levi's heart ached. Mr. Taylor, Hudson's voice was barely a whisper. Thank you for everything. In that sterile hospital corridor, under flickering fluorescent lights, Levi Taylor made a silent vow. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, he would not let this family, his family fall apart. The kitchen had saved him once. Now it was his turn to save it, and the remarkable woman who had made it all possible. The first signs of trouble appeared subtly. A few cancelled reservations here, a negative review there. By the time Levi fully grasped the situation, the Taylors was hemorrhaging money at an alarming rate. The timing couldn't have been worse. with Penelope's medical bills mounting and the Mayo Clinic trial requiring substantial upfront payments. Marcus brought the latest figures to Levy's office one morning, his face grave. "We're down 40% from last month," he reported, spreading spreadsheets across the desk. "And the Bradford Group just pulled their corporate accounts. All of them." Levy stared at the numbers, his jaw tightening. The Bradfords had been instrumental in the Taylors' early success, their influence in Chicago's business community opening doors that talent alone couldn't breach. Their departure wasn't just a financial blow, it was a social statement. "They're saying it's about quality," Marcus continued reluctantly. "But word is Mrs. Bradford's been telling people we've lost our exclusivity since we started taking in strays." The bitter emphasis made it clear who he was referring to. The restaurant's troubles multiplied exponentially. Suppliers, sensing weakness, began demanding payment up front. Long-standing customers, influenced by whispers and innuendo, started booking tables at newer, trendier establishments. Even the local food critics, once steadfast supporters, penned reviews that felt deliberately cruel. They're orchestrating this, Levi realized, reading yet another scathing critique. "The Bradfords and their circle, they're punishing us for helping Penelope and Hudson." The staff felt the pressure. Hours were cut, luxury ingredients scaled back, and the vibrant energy that had defined the Taylors began to dim. Yet something unexpected emerged from the crisis. Instead of fracturing under pressure, the kitchen team united. Line cooks volunteered to work extra hours without pay. Servers pooled their tips to help cover ingredients. Even the dishwashers offered to take pay cuts. "We're family now," they told Levi, "and family sticks together." Hudson, watching the struggle unfold, approached Levy one evening with a proposal. "What if we changed things?" he suggested. "Not the quality, but the approach. Mom always said the most beautiful dishes come from simple ingredients prepared with love." The idea took root. Instead of competing with newer restaurants for luxury and novelty, they began emphasizing craftsmanship and heritage. Penelope's classic techniques, combined with Levy's innovations and Hudson's fresh perspective, created something unique. They transformed the menu, telling the story behind each dish. The Hidden Spice Tribute became their signature, offering a series of courses that showcased the journey from Penelope's original restaurant to the Taylors' current evolution. Each plate came with a card explaining its history and significance. Regular customers who stayed loyal were treated to off-menu items, creating an intimate atmosphere that no amount of social influence could replicate. The kitchen became more transparent, with Hudson leading impromptu tours for interested diners, sharing his passion for cooking with infectious enthusiasm. But the financial pressure continued mounting. Late one night, after reviewing the latest numbers, Levi made a difficult call to his real estate agent. "List the property," he instructed. "All of it. The restaurant, the building, everything." Marcus, overhearing, burst into the office. "You can't. This place, it's not just a restaurant. It's a home for all of us." Levi looked up wearily. "Penelope's treatment costs more than we make in a month. Hudson's tuition is due. The staff needs to be paid." Sometimes he paused, the weight of responsibility heavy in his voice. "Sometimes we have to let go of one dream to save another." The news spread through the kitchen like wildfire. The next morning, every staff member gathered before service, led by Hudson. "We have a proposition," the boy announced, his young voice steady. "We want to invest in the Taylors." One by one, they stepped forward. The sous chef offered his savings. The pastry chef proposed selling her car. Even the newest dishwasher volunteered his weekly pay. "You gave us a chance," they said. "Let us return the favor." Levi, overwhelmed by their loyalty, had to turn away to hide his emotions. But Hudson wasn't finished. He pulled out a familiar chocolate box, the same one he'd brought on his first visit. "We start selling these," he declared. "Not as luxury items, but as our story. Each chocolate represents a person who made the Taylors special, and he hesitated, then continued strongly, "I've been teaching Thomas Bradford how to make them." The revelation stunned everyone. Thomas Bradford, their chief critic's son, had become Hudson's secret apprentice. His mother doesn't know, Hudson explained, but he loves cooking, really loves it, and maybe that's our way back. Through the next generation. As if on cue, the front door chimed. Thomas Bradford walked in, followed by several of his friends from St. Margaret's. "We heard you might need some help," he said awkwardly. "My friends, they'd like to learn too. About real cooking, not just fancy dining." Levi looked around his restaurant at his loyal staff, at Hudson's determined face, at the unlikely alliance forming before him, and felt something shift. Maybe salvation wouldn't come from high society connections or critics' reviews. Maybe it would come from returning to what Penelope taught him all those years ago, that cooking was about bringing people together, healing divisions, and creating family from strangers. "All right," he said finally, "let's show them what we're made of." The day Hudson withdrew his application from Stanford University, he did so without telling anyone. The acceptance letter, along with the partial scholarship offer, remained folded in his pocket as he worked the evening shift at the Taylors, helping to train the newest batch of student chefs. The decision had crystallized during his mother's latest treatment session. Watching her fight to stay awake while reviewing the restaurant's financials, he'd realized that even with Levi's help, they couldn't manage everything. The medical bills, despite insurance, were mounting. The experimental treatment's costs were staggering, and the restaurant's recovery was still fragile. "Your knife work is too aggressive," he told a young student, demonstrating the proper technique. "Let the blade do the work. Control comes from patience, not force," his mother's words in his voice, carrying on her legacy even as she fought her hardest battle. Levi found the crumpled acceptance letter later that night, accidentally knocked from Hudson's jacket during cleanup. His heart sank as he read it, understanding immediately what the boy had done. The sacrifice was written between every line of the prestigious university's welcome. 4:41 p.m. 12/17/2024. "Were you going to tell us?" Levi asked, finding Hudson in the empty kitchen, practicing his chocolate work, a habit he'd developed for dealing with stress. "There's nothing to tell," Hudson replied, not looking up from his tempering. "Stanford's too expensive and Mom needs me here." "It's not a sacrifice, it's a choice." "A choice your mother would never want you to make," Levi countered softly. "She's fought all these years to give you opportunities, Hudson. This would break her heart." Hudson's hands stilled over the chocolate, and watching her work herself to death wouldn't break mine. His voice cracked slightly. "The doctors say the next 6 months are critical. The new treatment, the physical therapy, she needs someone here. Not just for physical support, but..." He gestured at the kitchen around them. "This place, these students, teaching it keeps her fighting. I won't take that away by leaving." The kitchen fell silent except for the quiet hum of equipment. Levi studied the young man before him, seeing echoes of both Penelope's determination and his own past struggles. "What if there was another way?" Levi suggested carefully. "Stanford has an excellent online program for the first year. You could defer your physical attendance, study remotely while helping here, and then transfer to campus when..." He left the sentence unfinished, the possibility of when hanging between them. Hudson's hands resumed their work, muscle memory taking over as he considered the proposal. "The online program is still expensive," he pointed out. "And we need every penny for Mum's treatment." "The restaurant can manage," Levi insisted. "We'll find a way. Your mother taught me that there's always a solution if you're willing to look hard enough." Like she found solutions during those years on the run, Hudson's bitter tone carried years of watching his mother sacrifice everything for him. "Sometimes life doesn't give you perfect options, Mr. Taylor. Sometimes you just have to make the best choice you can with what you have." The conversation might have ended there, but fate had other plans. Penelope, having finished her evening treatment, appeared in the kitchen doorway. One look at their faces and the letter in Levi's hand told her everything. Hudson Michael Thompson, she said, her voice weak but carrying the authority that had guided countless chefs. If you think I'm going to let you sacrifice your dreams for me, you've forgotten everything I ever taught you about ingredients. Both men turned to her, surprised by her presence and her words. The finest ingredients. She continued, making her way slowly to the workstation, achieved their full potential only when given the right conditions to develop. Your talent, your intelligence, your compassion, these are your ingredients, my son. Stanford isn't just a school. It's the right condition for you to become who you're meant to be. Mum Hudson began, but she held up her hand. I didn't survive all these years, fight all these battles, just to watch you diminish your light for my sake. She picked up a piece of the chocolate he'd been tempering. Perfect crystallization, she noted. You've mastered this. Now it's time to master new things. Levi stepped forward. The online program is a good compromise, he suggested again. Hudson can start his degree while staying close, at least until I'm stronger, Penelope finished firmly, which I will be, because now I have one more reason to fight to see my son walk across that Stanford stage. Hudson looked between them, his resistance crumbling in the face of their united front. I don't want to leave you, he whispered, finally voicing his deepest fear. Penelope pulled him into a fierce hug, her frail frame still somehow containing all the strength he needed. My darling boy, she murmured, you could never leave me. Everything you are, everything you will become, that's where I live. That's how I become immortal. That night marked a turning point. Hudson resubmitted his application for the online program, while Levi and Penelope began reorganizing the kitchen schedules to accommodate his studies. The sacrifice transformed into a compromise, and then into something else entirely, a testament to the power of family to find solutions where none seemed possible. The Mayo Clinic's waiting room felt like a different world from the warm bustle of the tailor's kitchen. Penelope sat between Levi and Hudson, her normally steady hands fidgeting with her scarf. The experimental treatment that had offered so much hope was failing, and today they would learn exactly what that meant. Dr. Winters, the lead oncologist, didn't soften the blow. The cancer has become resistant to the treatment, she explained, pointing to illuminated scans. It's spreading more aggressively than before. The clinical terms couldn't mask the gravity of her words. Hudson gripped his mother's hand tighter, his young face set in determination. What about other trials? Different treatments, his voice cracked slightly, betraying the fear beneath his composed exterior. There are options, Dr. Winters admitted carefully, but they're extremely aggressive. The side effects would be significant. She hesitated, looking directly at Penelope. And given the advanced stage, we need to be realistic about outcomes. Levi leaned forward, his restaurant owner authority useless in this sterile room. What exactly are you saying? Without intervention, we're looking at 3 to 6 months, Dr. Winters said gently. With aggressive treatment, perhaps a year, but the quality of life would be severely compromised. But the silence that followed was deafening. Penelope closed her eyes, processing the news with the same quiet dignity she brought to everything. Hudson's grip on her hand had become painful, but she didn't pull away. I need to continue working, Penelope said finally, her voice steady. The kitchen, it's not just a job, it's who I am. Dr. Winters shook her head. The treatment we're proposing would make that impossible. Your immune system would be severely compromised. Any exposure to. No, the word came from Hudson, surprising everyone. There has to be another way. Mom, remember what you taught me about recipes. How sometimes the best solutions come from thinking differently. Levi caught the metaphor and ran with it. What if we modified the approach? Like adjusting a recipe that isn't working. Dr. Winters considered this. There is one other option. It's experimental, even more than the current trial. A combination of immunotherapy and targeted radiation. It's less aggressive, which means you could maintain some normalcy in your daily life. But She paused significantly. Insurance won't cover it, and the success rate is uncertain. Cost isn't an issue, Levi stated firmly, but Penelope held up her hand. It is an issue, she countered. I've seen the restaurant's books, Levi. I know what you're sacrificing. I won't let you destroy everything you've built. Hudson stood suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. Mom, remember when we were living in that shelter in Detroit? You took 3 buses every night to work at that diner, just so I could stay in the same school. You never gave up then. You can't give up now. Tears filled Penelope's eyes as she pulled her son close. Oh, my brave boy, I'm not giving up. I'm being practical. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is accept. No, Levi interrupted forcefully. Accepting defeat was never your style, Penelope. You taught me that. When every other restaurant turned me away, you saw possibility where others saw risk. Now it's my turn. He turned to Dr. Winters. Tell us more about this experimental treatment. Everything. We'll find a way. As the doctor began explaining the complex protocol, Penelope watched the 2 people she loved most in the world. Hudson barely containing his tears but still taking careful notes about medication schedules and dietary requirements. Levi asking detailed questions about success rates and quality of life metrics, his business mind trying to quantify hope. The devastating diagnosis hung over them like a storm cloud, but something else was present too, the same determination that had carried them through past struggles. In the sterile hospital room, their bond strengthened not despite the crisis, but because of it. All right, Penelope said finally, her voice soft but resolute. We'll try, but on one condition. She looked at both Levi and Hudson. We face this together as a family. No more sacrificing everything. We find a balance. The word family hung in the air, acknowledged at last. Dr. Winters, watching the scene unfold, made a quiet note in her file. Under support system, she wrote exceptional. Outside, Chicago's winter wind howled against the hospital windows, but inside, a different kind of storm was brewing, one made of love, determination, and the refusal to let go of hope. The news of Penelope's condition spread through Chicago's culinary community like wildfire, bringing with it a tide of both support and cruel judgment. While loyal customers rallied around the Taylors, others saw an opportunity to strike. The Bradford circle, in particular, became increasingly vocal in their criticism. It's a health violation, Mrs. Bradford declared loudly during lunch at a competing restaurant. Having someone with cancer working in food service, it's simply not sanitary. The fact that Penelope had moved to a consulting role, no longer handling food directly, didn't matter to the rumor mill. Hudson faced the brunt of the backlash at St. Margaret's. What had been subtle social exclusion turned into open hostility. One morning, he found his locker plastered with printouts of negative restaurant reviews, scrawled across them in red marker, like mother, like son, both toxic. Even Thomas Bradford, who had been secretly learning chocolate making from Hudson, withdrew under pressure from his family. I'm sorry, he mumbled in the hallway, avoiding eye contact. My parents say I can't be associated with. They say it might affect my college applications. The conflict reached its peak during a parent-teacher conference. Mrs. Bradford, serving as head of the school's board, raised concerns about Hudson's scholarship, given his family's situation. She suggested perhaps it would be better for everyone if he transferred to a more suitable school. Levi, attending as Hudson's guardian while Penelope underwent treatment, felt his temper rise. More suitable, he repeated coldly. You mean a school where excellence isn't measured by bank accounts? Mr. Taylor, Mrs. Bradford smiled thinly. Surely you understand. The other parents are concerned about the atmosphere. A boy from his background, living above a restaurant with a dying mother. That's enough, the voice came from the doorway. Penelope stood there, pale but regal in her chef's whites, Hudson clutching her arm for support. Despite the headscarf covering her hair loss, she radiated dignity. Mrs. Bradford, Penelope continued, stepping into the room. 20 years ago, I taught at the Culinary Institute. Do you remember who recommended you for admission? Who spent extra hours helping you master basic techniques you claim to already know? The color drained from Mrs. Bradford's face. MS Clark. But you. Looked different? Had more money? Hadn't experienced how quickly life can change. Penelope's voice remained gentle, but her words carried weight. The same skills I taught you then, I'm teaching your son now, though he has something you never did: genuine passion for the craft. The revelation that Thomas had been secretly training at the tailors sent shockwaves through the room. Mrs. Bradford's carefully constructed social facade cracked. Thomas would never. Ask your son about the chocolate truffles he made last week, Hudson interrupted quietly. Ask him why he keeps coming back, even after you've forbidden it. Sometimes passion is stronger than prejudice. The confrontation sparked a larger conversation within the school community. Other parents, tired of the social politics, began speaking up. The daughter of a tech billionaire revealed she'd been taking secret cooking classes too. A senator's son admitted he dreamed of becoming a chef. That evening, as the tailor's kitchen filled with students from St. Margaret's now openly pursuing their culinary interests, Penelope watched from her observation post. Despite her weakness, her eyes sparkled with familiar warmth. You see, she whispered to Levi, sometimes it takes a crisis to break down walls we didn't even know existed. Hudson moved among his classmates, demonstrating techniques with his mother's patient grace. The same students who had shunned him now listened attentively as he explained the science behind chocolate crystallization. Thomas Bradford, finally free from pretense, flourished under Hudson's guidance. My mother, he confided during a quiet moment, she cries when she cooks. I think she misses who she used to be before society told her who to become. The kitchen, always a place of transformation, worked its magic once again. Social barriers melted like chocolate in a double boiler, replaced by the universal language of food and passion. Yet beneath the surface of this victory, time ticked relentlessly forward. Penelope's strength waned with each passing day, even as her legacy grew stronger through the young lives she and Hudson touched. The cruel irony wasn't lost on any of them. Just as they were breaking down walls, the clock was building new ones, equally insurmountable. But in the warmth of the kitchen, surrounded by the next generation of culinary dreamers, they found moments of perfect peace. Sometimes, Levi reflected, watching Hudson guide Thomas through a particularly tricky technique, the greatest victories come disguised as defeats. The breaking point came on a quiet Sunday evening, when exhaustion and despair finally caught up with each of them. Hudson found Levi alone in the restaurant's office, surrounded by unpaid bills and medical statements, his head in his hands. The proud restaurateur who had built an empire was silently weeping. I can't fix this, Levi whispered when he sensed Hudson's presence. The restaurant, your mother's health, the mounting debts. I'm failing everyone. The admission, raw and painful, hung in the air between them. Upstairs, Penelope sat at her vanity, staring at her reflection. The latest round of treatment had taken its toll. Her chef's whites hung loose on her frame, her complexion ashen. With trembling fingers, she picked up her resignation letter. I'm becoming a burden, she murmured to her reflection. They'd be better off without. The sound of shattering glass interrupted her thoughts. In the kitchen below, Marcus Bennett had finally snapped. Months of watching his mentor fade, of maintaining a brave face while training new staff, of juggling reduced resources, it all exploded in a moment of fury. Everything we built is slipping away, he shouted, surrounded by broken plates. The critics are circling like vultures, waiting for us to fail. The suppliers are threatening to cut us off. And we're all just pretending everything's fine. Hudson, caught between these three breaking points, felt his own carefully maintained composure crumbling. He fled to the roof, where he and his mother had often shared quiet moments watching the city lights. But tonight, even the familiar skyline offered no comfort. The weight of being strong for everyone, his mother, Levi, the staff, suddenly felt crushing. He was just a boy, after all. A boy watching his family fall apart, his home crumble, and his mother slip away despite all their efforts. The door to the roof creaked open. Thomas Bradford stepped out, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Your mum sent me," he said simply, offering one to Hudson. "She said you might need a friend." Hudson accepted the cup, his hands shaking. How does she still think of others when He couldn't finish the sentence. Below, the kitchen had fallen silent. Marcus sat amid the broken dishes, while Levi emerged from his office, drawn by the commotion. Penelope, using the last of her strength, made her way downstairs. I remember she began softly, her voice carrying in the quiet kitchen, a night much like this at the Hidden Spice. Everything was going wrong. The power had failed, orders were backing up, and I was ready to give up. She paused, leaning against a counter for support. But then something remarkable happened. My staff, my customers, they all pitched in. Someone brought candles. Others helped serve by flashlight. What could have been our breaking point became our finest hour. Levi looked up, recognizing the story. It was the night he'd first walked into her kitchen, hungry and desperate. The night she'd seen past his circumstances to his potential. "We're not breaking," Penelope continued, her voice growing stronger. "We're being forged. Like tempering chocolate, sometimes you have to reach the breaking point to become stronger." On the roof, Hudson and Thomas heard her words through the ventilation system. Thomas turned to his friend. "You know what my father always says about business? The darkest hour is just before dawn." Hudson wiped his eyes. "We're not just a business, though. We're a family," Levi finished, joining them on the roof. Marcus followed, then other staff members, drawn by some unspoken understanding. Finally, Penelope Ed, supported by 2 line cooks. Under the stars, they formed a circle: the proud chef and her son, the successful restaurateur, the privileged boy who found his passion in their kitchen, the bitter executive chef who rediscovered his heart, and all the others who had become part of their story. "Tomorrow," Penelope announced, her voice carrying the authority that had guided so many careers, "we fight back. Not as individuals, but as one, because that's what families do." The breaking point became a turning point. In acknowledging their fears, their exhaustion, their near defeat, they found new strength. Sometimes, Levi would later reflect, you have to let yourself break to discover how many hands are ready to help put you back together. As the city lights twinkled below them, they began to plan, not just for survival but for triumph, because even in their darkest hour, they had something their critics could never understand: the unshakable bond of a family forged in fire and tempered by love. The manila envelope arrived at the tailor's on a quiet Tuesday morning, its Las Vegas postmark instantly catching Levi's attention. Inside, he found documents that would change everything: police reports, bank statements, and a handwritten confession from James Wilson, Penelope's late husband, dated just before his death. The truth was more staggering than anyone had imagined. James hadn't just gambled away their money, he'd been part of an elaborate scheme to defraud restaurant investors across the country. The Hidden Spice had been one of many casualties, but Penelope's was different. She'd been deliberately chosen, her success and reputation making her the perfect unwitting front for their operations. She never knew the confession read. I made sure of that. Every document she signed, every contract she thought she was expanding the business, helping other chefs start their restaurants. The guilt is killing me faster than the cancer. Levi's hands trembled as he read further. The loan sharks who had terrorized Penelope weren't criminals at all, but federal agents building a case. They'd been trying to protect her, keep her moving to stay ahead of James's real associates who blamed her for their scheme's collapse. In his final days, James had transferred everything, not just his confession, but proof of Penelope's innocence and documents that could reclaim her stolen assets to a safety deposit box in Las Vegas. Cancer had taken him before he could tell her the truth. The final page was a letter addressed directly to Levi. "I've watched your success from afar," James wrote. "You're everything I pretended to be, a genuine success built on real talent and hard work. Penelope saw that in you from the start. Please help her reclaim what I stole. Not just the money, but her reputation, her legacy." Attached was a key to the safety deposit box, along with account numbers and passwords to access offshore accounts where much of the money still sat, untouched. The total amount was staggering enough to save the Taylors, cover Penelope's medical expenses, and restore everything she'd lost. Levi sat in his office, overwhelmed by the implications. All these years, Penelope had carried the shame of what she thought was her failure, her poor judgment. She'd rebuilt her life from nothing, never knowing she'd been a victim, not an accomplice. The sound of laughter from the kitchen drew his attention. Through the window he could see Penelope supervising a cooking class, her strength visibly waning but her spirit undimmed. Hudson stood beside her, demonstrating a technique to Thomas Bradford and the other students. Despite everything, she'd never lost her passion for teaching, for nurturing others' dreams. Mr. Taylor Marcus appeared in the doorway. "The FBI agents are here. They say it's about MS Clark." The two agents who entered weren't what Levy expected. The older one removed his badge with tears in his eyes. "We've been waiting years for this," he said softly, watching over her, trying to keep her safe while we built our case. "James Wilson's confession is the final piece we needed." The younger agent added, "All charges against MS Clark have been officially cleared. The assets can be released immediately. We just need her signature." Levi looked through his office window again, watching Penelope share her knowledge, her grace intact despite years of undeserved shame. How do you tell someone that their deepest wounds were based on lies? That their struggles, while real, were born of deception rather than failure? The answer came from an unexpected source. Hudson, passing by with a tray of freshly tempered chocolates, paused in the doorway, looking at the documents spread across Levy's desk, the FBI badges. He understood immediately. "Mom always says," he offered quietly, "that the truth, like good chocolate, might be bitter at first, but it brings sweetness in the end." Levi nodded, gathering the papers. It was time for Penelope Clark to reclaim not just her assets, but her story. The truth would change everything, yet somehow he knew it would only confirm what he'd always believed about his mentor. Her greatest wealth had never been in bank accounts, but in the lives she'd touched, the legacy she'd built, one lesson at a time. The news of Penelope's vindication spread through Chicago's culinary community like wildfire. The story of her unwitting victimization and years of silent dignity touched hearts and awakened consciences. The response was overwhelming and immediate. Former students from the Hidden Spice began emerging from the woodwork, sharing stories of how Penelope had changed their lives. Social media exploded with Justice for Penelope posts, accompanied by photos of dishes she'd taught them to prepare. The narrative shifted dramatically from whispered scandal to public redemption. Mrs. Bradford, perhaps feeling the sting of her own conscience, made the first move. She arrived at the Taylors during prep time, her usual aristocratic demeanor replaced by genuine remorse. "I was wrong," she admitted to a stunned kitchen staff, "about everything. And I'd like to make it right." Within days, she had organized a gala benefit dinner, leveraging her social connections not for exclusion but for support. Chicago's elite culinary scene rallied around the Taylors. Renowned chefs offered to guest cook, suppliers provided premium ingredients at cost, and food critics penned heartfelt retractions of their earlier harsh reviews. The transformation was most visible in the kitchen itself. Word spread that Penelope was teaching again, sharing her knowledge during her stronger moments between treatments. The waiting list for her classes grew impossibly long. Young chefs from across the country began making pilgrimages to the Taylors, hoping to learn from the woman who had maintained her passion for teaching despite everything. Thomas Bradford's courage in defying social expectations inspired others. Children of Chicago's elite families started speaking openly about their culinary aspirations. The kitchen became a great equalizer, where the daughter of a senator chopped vegetables alongside a dishwasher's son, both learning the fundamentals from Hudson. Local businesses joined the support movement. A neighboring hotel offered discounted rooms for out-of-town students. The farmers' market reserved their best produce for the tailors. Even competing restaurants sent their staff for training, recognizing that elevating the entire culinary community was more important than individual rivalry. The most touching support came from unexpected quarters. Former shelter residents whom Penelope had helped during her years of hiding started arriving with small offerings, hand-knit scarves, home-baked bread, heartfelt letters. Each carried the same message: she had helped them maintain their dignity during their darkest times, and now they wanted to return the kindness. Marcus Bennett, once skeptical of change, became an ardent advocate. He established a scholarship program in Penelope's name, aimed at aspiring chefs from disadvantaged backgrounds. Excellence knows no social boundaries. He declared at the launch, echoing words Penelope had spoken to him months earlier. The kitchen's atmosphere transformed from one of crisis to celebration. While Penelope's health battles continued, she was no longer fighting alone. Every small victory was shared, every setback met with renewed determination from her extended family of supporters. As winter turned to spring, the tailors hosted a special dinner service. The menu featured dishes created by Penelope's students, past and present, famous and unknown. Each plate told a story of transformation, of lessons learned and passed on. The event sold out instantly, with proceeds going to a fund for aspiring chefs facing hardship. But that evening, watching her legacy take shape around her, Penelope finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of her redemption. "You see, Hudson," she whispered to her son, as they watched Thomas confidently lead a kitchen tour. "Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us to our greatest purpose." The community's embrace hadn't just saved a restaurant or cleared a name, it had validated the power of second chances, of judging people by their character rather than their circumstances. In their support of Penelope had rediscovered their own capacity for compassion and growth. As the evening ended, Levi raised a toast that captured the spirit of their transformation to Penelope Clark, who taught us that true excellence isn't measured by what we achieve, but by how many others we lift up along the way. The breakthrough in Penelope's treatment came from an unexpected source. During one of the student cooking classes, a quiet boy named Michael, whose father worked at a leading pharmaceutical company, overheard a conversation about her condition. "My dad's team is working on something new," he mentioned to Hudson during their chocolate tempering session. "It's a different approach to immunotherapy, specifically for cases like your mom's." Within days, Dr. Richard Chen, Michael's father and a leading oncology researcher, was sitting in the tailor's private dining room, reviewing Penelope's case files. "The trial is still in early stages," he explained, "but your mother's specific genetic markers make her an ideal candidate." What followed was a whirlwind of activity. Dr. Chen's team expedited Penelope's application for the trial, while the pharmaceutical company, moved by her story and her impact on their executive's son, offered to cover the experimental treatment's entire cost. Meanwhile, another unexpected ally emerged in the form of James Wilson's former associate, Anthony Martinez. Having read about Penelope's vindication, he came forward with additional documents that not only secured her legal position, but also revealed investments she hadn't known existed. "James wasn't just hiding money," Martinez explained. "He was secretly buying properties in your name. Legitimate investments meant as some kind of redemption. There are restaurants across the country that technically belong to you." The revelation transformed the tailor's financial situation overnight. These properties, combined with the recovered assets, provided security for both the restaurant and Hudson's future. But more importantly, they offered a platform for Penelope's vision of nurturing culinary talent regardless of background. Thomas Bradford, inspired by these developments, convinced his mother to establish a foundation supporting culinary education for underprivileged youth. Mrs. Bradford, in her journey from antagonist to advocate, found a new purpose in helping others overcome the social barriers she had once enforced. The kitchen itself underwent a renaissance. Students from Dr. Chen's hospital's pediatric ward began visiting for cooking lessons, their joy in creating beautiful food providing a powerful complement to their medical treatments. And the healing power of cooking, which had sustained Penelope through her darkest times, now extended to a new generation. Hudson and Thomas turned their chocolate-making sessions into a small business venture, with proceeds funding scholarships for aspiring young chefs. Their enterprise, born of friendship that transcended social boundaries, became a model for other student initiatives. Even Marcus Bennett found unexpected allies in his mission to transform the Taylor's training program. Former critics became mentors, competing restaurants sent their best chefs to teach specialized courses, and culinary schools began offering credits for time spent learning in Penelope's kitchen. The convergence of medical breakthrough, financial security, and community support created something more than just solutions to immediate problems. It fostered an environment where healing physical, emotional, and social could flourish. As Penelope watched these developments from her newly established teaching station, designed to accommodate her treatments while allowing her to continue sharing her knowledge, she reflected on life's unexpected turns. Sometimes she told her students, our greatest allies are found in the most unlikely places, and our deepest wounds lead us to our most profound healing. The kitchen, once again, had become more than just a place to prepare food. It was a crucible where differences dissolved, where healing happened on multiple levels, and where the next generation learned not just culinary skills, but the true meaning of community and resilience. 1 year after the night of breaking points and revelations, the Taylors hosted a very special dinner service. The occasion marked not just Penelope's official remission announcement, but also the launch of the Clark Taylor Culinary Institute, a dream born from adversity and nurtured by unwavering hope. The dining room buzzed with an extraordinary mix of guests. Mrs. Bradford sat comfortably beside a former shelter resident, who now managed one of Penelope's recovered restaurant properties. Thomas and Hudson, wearing matching chef's whites, moved confidently through the crowd, serving their signature chocolates. Dr. Chen chatted with Marcus about the healing properties of different herbs, while his son Michael demonstrated knife skills to a group of young cancer patients who had joined the cooking program. Levy stood at the entrance, watching the scene unfold. The restaurant had evolved beyond his original vision into something far more meaningful. The elegant decor remained, but the atmosphere had transformed from exclusive luxury to inclusive excellence. Every surface gleamed with possibility, every corner held stories of transformation. Penelope, her strength restored though her hair was still growing back, had taken her place at the demonstration kitchen. Her hands moved with their old certainty as she prepared to teach one final lesson for the evening. The audience fell silent as she began to speak. A year ago, we stood on the brink of losing everything, she began, her voice clear and strong. Not just this restaurant or my health, but our belief in the power of second chances. Her eyes met Mrs. Bradford's, who nodded in acknowledgement of their shared journey from adversaries to allies. But we discovered something remarkable, Penelope continued, beginning to prepare a sauce that had become legendary among her students. When we stop seeing success as a competition and start viewing it as a collaboration, we all rise together. The sauce came together perfectly, just as the community around them had. Hudson stepped forward to assist his mother, their movements synchronized by years of working side by side. No longer was he the scared boy selling chocolates on the street. He had become a young man confident in his skills and secure in his place in the world. This institute, Penelope gestured to the newly renovated teaching kitchen, represents more than just culinary education. It's a testament to the fact that excellence knows no social boundaries, that healing can come through many forms, and that family isn't always defined by blood. Levi joined them at the demonstration station, completing the picture of their unconventional family. The three of them, mentor, protégé, and the boy who had brought them back together, stood as living proof that love, like the perfect sauce, could bind disparate elements into something extraordinary. Marcus raised his glass, initiating a toast that spread through the room. To second chances he called out, his voice thick with emotion. The response echoed from every corner, from those who had been part of their story from the beginning, and those who had joined along the way. As the evening wound down, Penelope surveyed her domain, not just the restaurant, but the community it had fostered. The conflicts that had once threatened to tear them apart had instead forced them to build something stronger. The prejudices that had divided them had dissolved in the heat of shared purpose and understanding. The kitchen, as always, had worked its magic. But this time it wasn't just transforming ingredients into dishes, it had transformed lives, healed wounds, and created bonds that would endure long after the last plate was served. The transformations that took place within the tailor's walls extended far beyond its culinary offerings. Each person who had been part of their story emerged changed, their perspectives shifted, their hearts expanded in ways they hadn't thought possible. Hudson, once a frightened boy selling chocolates to save his mother, had blossomed into a confident young man. His natural talent for teaching, inherited from Penelope, made him a favorite among the Institute students. More importantly, he had learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was the courage to remain open to love and possibility despite life's hardships. Levi found himself transformed from a successful restaurateur into something more meaningful, a guardian of dreams, a protector of potential. The empire he'd built now served a greater purpose than just culinary excellence. In helping to save his mentor, he had rediscovered the pure joy of cooking that had first drawn him to the kitchen. Mrs. Bradford's transformation was perhaps the most dramatic. The woman who had once wielded social status as a weapon now used her influence to break down barriers. Her weekly cooking classes for shelter residents became legendary, not just for the skills taught but for the dignity restored. Thomas discovered that following his passion required more courage than following expectations. His decision to pursue a culinary career, though initially met with resistance, inspired other young people to question the paths chosen for them by others. His friendship with Hudson proved that authentic connections transcend social boundaries. Marcus Bennett shed his bitter exterior to reveal the mentor he'd always had the potential to become. His demanding standards remained, but they were now tempered with empathy and understanding. The kitchen staff, once fearful of his criticism, came to appreciate his dedication to their growth. Dr. Chen and his son Michael found that their shared experience at the tailors strengthened their own relationship. The kitchen became their common ground, a place where medical science and culinary art merged in unexpected ways. Their collaboration led to innovative programs combining nutrition science with traditional cooking techniques. Even the youngest students underwent profound changes. Children from the cancer ward discovered joy and purpose in creating beautiful food, their medical battles temporarily forgotten in the magic of the kitchen. Their resilience inspired everyone around them, proving that healing takes many forms. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation was Penelope's. Her journey from celebrated chef to hidden fugitive and back again had stripped away any pretense, leaving only the essential truth of who she was: a teacher, a mother, a survivor whose greatest triumph lay not in her own success, but in nurturing the success of others. Together they had discovered that true transformation rarely happens in isolation. Like the complex chemical reactions that turn raw ingredients into finished dishes, personal growth requires the catalyst of connection, the heat of challenge, and the binding agent of love. The kitchen, their constant throughout every change, stood as a testament to the power of transformation. Its walls had witnessed their struggles, celebrated their victories, and ultimately proved that the most important recipes are not those that feed the body, but those that nourish the soul. On the 5th anniversary of Hudson's first chocolate sale outside the tailor's, the restaurant closed for a private celebration unlike any other. The space had been transformed into a wonderland of culinary artistry, with stations representing every significant moment in their shared journey. The centerpiece was a chocolate fountain designed by Hudson and Thomas, now graduates of the Clark Taylor Institute's first class. Around it, photographs told their story: Penelope teaching a young Levi, Hudson's first day at St. Margaret's, the night of their breaking point, and countless moments of triumph and healing in between. "Welcome to our family reunion," Penelope announced, standing strong and healthy at the demonstration kitchen. Her cancer had been in remission for 3 years, though the experience had left its mark in her prematurely silver hair and the wisdom in her eyes. Today we celebrate not just survival but revival. The guests represented every chapter of their story. Former shelter residents who now ran their own cafes mingled with medical researchers developing new nutritional therapies. Children who had learned to cook during their cancer treatments, now healthy and growing, helped serve appetizers they'd created themselves. Mrs. Bradford, who had become one of their strongest advocates, arrived with a surprise official approval for the Institute to offer accredited degrees. Education, like excellent food, should be accessible to all, she declared, her social butterfly persona now grounded in genuine purpose. Levi unveiled the expansion plans for the Clark Taylor Foundation. What had begun as a single restaurant's transformation would now extend nationwide, with programs specifically designed to support aspiring chefs facing personal or financial challenges. Hudson and Thomas presented their own contribution, a cookbook titled Kitchen Lessons, combining recipes with the life wisdom they'd gained in the Taylor's kitchen. The proceeds would fund scholarships for children of cancer patients, ensuring that no young person would have to choose between education and family obligations. Dr. Chen announced that the hospital's culinary therapy program, inspired by Penelope's journey, had shown such promising results that it was being adopted by medical centers across the country. Sometimes, he noted, the best medicine doesn't come in pills. As the evening progressed, Marcus led the current class of students in presenting a 7-course meal, each dish telling part of their collective story. The final course, naturally, was Hudson's signature chocolate truffles, now famous throughout Chicago. 5 years ago, Penelope reflected, addressing the gathered family, for that's what they had truly become. I thought I was watching everything end. Instead, I was witnessing a beginning. Each of you has added your own unique flavor to this remarkable recipe we call life. The celebration continued late into the night, but it wasn't an ending. Rather, it was a milestone in an ongoing journey. The kitchen lights would come on early the next morning, welcoming new students, new challenges, new opportunities to transform lives through the power of food and love. As Hudson often said, quoting his mother's wisdom, the best recipes, like the best lives, are those that leave room for improvisation, adaptation, and the occasional surprise ingredient that changes everything for the better. If this story touched your heart and resonated with your own experiences, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your support through subscriptions, likes, and shares helps us continue creating meaningful narratives that celebrate the human spirit. Please share this story with friends and family who might find inspiration in this tale of resilience, redemption, and the transformative power of love. Together, let's build a community where stories of hope and second chances can reach those who need them most. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories that remind us of the extraordinary strength within ordinary lives.